Hello, hello. My name is April Malone with Yes, I Work From Home, and this is the podcast. Today I have Paul Glover. He is out of Downers Grove, which is a Chicago suburb in Illinois. He is a performance improvement coach. Did I get that right? It's performance. I said it wrong.
No, you didn't. Performance and improvement. Sure.
Is it? Okay, I got it right. So why
Absolutely.
don't
Yeah,
you take it from here, Paul, please?
I will. Actually, I bill myself as a no BS workplace performance coach.
Okay.
So, yes, it's all about coaching. It's all about coaching for performance. I'm not a life coach. You would not want me in that position. I'm much more structured as a recovering attorney. So, we're all about action plans and reaching specific goals that create legacy. I don't believe that someone should enter into a coaching relationship and not have legacy goals. It's always good to get to improve. Baby steps are fine, but you have to have something at the end of that coaching process that matters a lot because it's
And
and being coached is difficult.
when you say legacy goals, do you mean financial goals?
No, not necessarily. It could be workplace goals. If you're leading a team, what do you want your legacy to be when you hand that team off? When you are doing financial goals, what are those goals? Are they realistic? And if they are, what are you doing as an action plan to get there? So action plans to me is how people actually, or how people actually accomplish their goals. Most people have a goal. They just are still trying to figure out how to get there. Coaches are
Right.
all helping you establish the action plan and then making sure you actually execute.
Now, you have been working from home for like 20 years. Was all of this always the performance improvement coaching, or is it other stuff too?
No, all that. I'm a recovering lawyer, no longer practice law. And I found that I had a rather unique skill set that, as I thought about it and that skill set, the elements of it, I decided that I would be a good coach because what I bring to the coaching process is very relevant to leaders. And so I started off and developed a national coaching program. I currently have 45 clients, and it's throughout the United States. And I'm successful at it, but I tell people my legacy is reflected in the people I coach. When they're successful, that is my legacy. Because as I tell people, coaches don't directly contribute, right? That's up to whoever they're coaching to take what they've learned or what they've decided on and applying that. And I'm there to help. I tell people that one of the ways I address myself based off of a client was I'm a Sherpa. I I'm not going to climb the mountain for you. I'm going to be there with you for the journey. And again, I believe that it is a mountain. If we're not talking about climbing the mountain, we only want to climb a hill, you really need to talk to somebody else because I don't have the patience for that. But if you're telling me this is my mountain that I'm climbing, and at the end of that, I want to have achieved something, and here's what I want to have achieved, then I will assist you. I will carry some of the pack. Whenever you get tired, I'm going to encourage you. Whenever you stop being committed, I'm going to tell you that that's unacceptable. That
And
our
the Sherpa, are
relationship.
they like a guide? They know the way.
Oh, absolutely. You know the way. I've been up the mountain before. I tell you that I know that you're unique, but most of the issues we'll talk about, I've had experience with because I've coached leaders, and we're all human beings, and we all share a lot of the same issues, especially leadership. So yes, I'm going to be able to guide you, and I'm not. Most coaches do not favor my approach, by the way, because if you're going down for the third time in the deep end of the pool, I'm not going to still ask you, can you figure this out? I think that saving someone when you recognize they don't know what they don't know, it's my job to help them. And a part of that is to talk about the situation so they have enough information to be able to make a decision rather than continue to struggle. I don't understand the concept of struggling. If there's a way to make it simple, we should do that because
So
life
rather
is
than
hard
just
enough.
letting people struggle and watching them struggle, you're like,
Oh,
let's teach you.
absolutely.
Okay.
Like I can't be a bystander. See, that to me is being a bystander coach. I'm gonna stand there and watch until you figure it out. I'll keep saying things. I'll keep asking you questions. And well, I just so you understand how that level of commitment is established. I don't take any compensation until we're finished with the coaching period.
Really?
End of that, if we have not reached the goals that have been set, I don't get paid.
Mm.
However, I also believe that if I'm willing to put my skin in the game, that's something most coaches don't do, right? Because I've got time and energy, but now I'm putting resources in. I expect a equal commitment from the person in the coaching process. So when we have established what you're going to do between this call and the next call, do it.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't do it, then we have to have a serious accountability conversation. Now, if you tell me why and I understand, what we'll work that out. If you tell me you didn't have time, I'm not happy.
Sounds like a trusting relationship.
Oh, absolutely. And by the way, isn't that how, of course, coaching is absolutely about developing the psychological safety to be honest with each other. And to me, every meaningful relationship has got to have that as the basis. Otherwise, it can't be meaningful. If I'm afraid to tell you the truth, how can we have a trusting relationship? How can it be meaningful?
So before we started recording, we chatted a little bit about a talk that you've given about everyone needs to have a fool in their life. Can
Yes,
you talk a little bit about that and how that relates to what you were just saying?
sure. First, I'll explain that the title of that talk, which I hope to do as a TED talk, is based off of the relationship between the king and the gesture. Now, the gesture, if you look at any picture of the king at the bottom of the throne, someone dressed in a multicolored uniform, a costume, is down there, and we look at that and we go, well, that's the guy that made the king laugh, right? They jumped up, they capered, they told jokes, imitations, whatever they did. But the reality was that's not what the fool did. Because the king had been anointed by God to be king, he was infallible. Because to question the king was to question God. And so anyone who questioned the king's decisions committed the crime of heresy. And heresy was punishable by death. However, everyone knew that the king was still a human being who made mistakes. So the issue was, how do you tell the king he's making mistakes and not get killed? Well, the creation of the gesture or the fool was the solution to that. The fool was actually a trusted advisor to the king because he was viewed as insane. He was not held accountable to his words or his actions. So he could actually tell the king when they were making a mistake, and he had the psychological safety of being viewed as insane that protected him. So I look at the concept of having a fool in your life, and the title of the talk is "Everyone Needs a Fool in Their Life." Everybody does. We need someone that we trust, but also cares enough about us that they will tell us the truth. But that only works if we give them the psychological safety to do so. There can't be negative backlash when someone tells you the truth. If there is, the relationship doesn't work, and people won't tell you the truth. Leaders have so many filters between themselves and what they think is happening and what's really happening that you need to have a fool who has the psychological safety to tell the leader the reality and go through those filters. I think just about every relationship that's meaningful, you've got to have someone in your life that's your fool.
That you can trust enough and not backlash and be mad and cut them out because you think they're toxic. It's that's going to be a hard line to draw these days. Everyone's relationships are being reevaluated, it feels, in my life and other people's that I've talked to. People not agreeing about certain things. Can you talk a little bit about setting boundaries in that setting?
Oh, absolutely, and that is very important, especially today. It always has been. Relationships are difficult. At best, they're difficult. Personal relationships, the closer that you get, are even more difficult. And so we have what I call circles of love that work their way, ripple out. The first circle of love, of course, is ourselves, our significant others. Then we get to our children. Then we move to our relatives. Then we move out to our best friends, and we move out to acquaintances. So the circle of love ripples out. But each one of those circles has to have boundaries about it, because we have to feel comfortable and trusting enough to be able to talk to this person about personal and sensitive issues. But we also have to respect their position. They have their own thoughts about things. And so we have to establish a relationship based on boundaries. And that means I am willing to respect your boundaries once I know what they are. And this is where we run into trouble. Most of the time, we're not doing that. We're not saying, let's see what our boundaries are. We're just blundering ahead, saying things, even when we are looking at the person or interacting with the person, and we realize that they're upset. Because we believe we can convince people to do what we want, persuade them to our perspective point of view. And that's a difficult task. And second, you have to be very cautious about that, because just because I tell people, just because I tell you the truth doesn't mean you don't find me annoying. I'm absolutely annoying because I'm telling you something you may not want to hear. So we have to be able to have that interchange and not allow it to become toxic or dysfunctional. If we don't establish boundaries, relationships will be dysfunctional and eventually will be toxic.
Well, and we can't always take everybody's advice either. We might disagree, but maintaining that relationship and salvaging it even after we disagree can be tricky too.
Well, it can be, and you're absolutely correct. Part of my coaching is I tell people, this is my opinion. This doesn't mean that you should do it. You should do it only if it's comfortable and aligns with your values.
Mm-hmm.
Talking about relationships, a lot of that is about values. And so the exploratory part of any relationship is discovering that. And that means we have to be open to hearing it.
Mm-hmm.
Not, that relationship is never going to be meaningful. And I'll use the coaching relationship because it's not personal, but I have to care. I have to be. I tell people I am always curious, but I am empathetically curious, and that allows me to ask the question and then be okay with the answer.
Hmm.
And that's where we normally mess up our relationship. We're not curious enough to find out about the other person before we start telling them about us. And that's where it breaks down immediately. You've got to be willing to understand the other person to have a meaningful relationship. I believe that's empathetic curiosity. And you ask people questions, and based off of that, you understand their value system. And you recognize why they do what they do. Now, if it's unacceptable to you, you make the decision about pushing them farther out into the circles of love, right? We can't stay close friends because I got married, you didn't, and suddenly we don't have common ground. Our opinions are different about a lot of things, and we no longer are connecting, right? You can always tell when you're connecting with someone. And I say that that's an exchange of positive energy. I've got 45 people I talk to every other week, and some coaches go, "That's impossible. You can't do that. That's too many." And the only way I do that is because because of how I vet people who are in my coaching program, we have an exchange of energy every time we talk. And now in the pandemic, I took on more stress from those people than I normally would, because that's a part of that exchange. They needed to de-stress. When you think about leaders, if their team is suffering and they're a good leader, an empathetic leader, they will take stress from their team. What do you do with that? Right? You've got to dissipate stress. One way to do it is in the coaching program, because I'm more than willing to help you de-stress. which means I'm more than willing to take it on. By the way, I have to get rid of it too. I can only tell you that if you don't figure out how to get rid of stress, eventually it breaks you down. So that was a part of the process, and so when I look at the exchange of energy, I believe that's in every relationship. And if it's not there, if you don't feel it, again, that takes them out. It's not that they can't be acquaintances, but I suggest that they're not going to be a friend or a close friend. And by the way, just because people are related doesn't mean we necessarily have a good relationship with them.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I mean, I think that I work with family businesses, and it's the most dysfunctional business organization you can have, where the family is not only a family, but they're in the business.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Oh my goodness, yeah. Half of my time is mediating, but that's okay. I mean, and we're still established. That doesn't mean they don't love each other. It's just
Mhm.
different opinions about how the business should be run. Well, you
Well,
got to get a little outside. Go ahead.
when we first started talking before we started recording, you asked me, why do you do the podcast? Who is this for? What's the purpose or something like that? And I think that was your way of trying to get to know how I'm thinking and
Absolutely.
caring. And I appreciate that. Because, a
Sure.
lot of people come onto a podcast, for a way to plug their business or, I mean, to be online or something like that. But I can tell that you care.
Well, and thank you. And by the way, I do that. First, I believe that if you're going to we're having a meaningful conversation as far as I'm concerned, right? It's an exchange of ideas. I know I'm talking a lot more than you are, but that's the privilege of being the guest. So you're asking the empathetic questions, the curiosity questions, which I think are essential for a meaningful conversation. If you've got somebody, all I want to do is tell you how much money I make, or wow, I could really use some clients. Hope somebody's out there. That doesn't work real well for this. At least it doesn't for me. So no, I do this because first, I'm infinitely curious, especially about podcasters, because a lot of work. It truly is. It's a dedication. Back to commitment. I'm huge on commitment. To be an effective podcast host, you have to be committed to this process. And so I like to know something about the people who are doing this. And so yeah, it's just part of the coaching. It's part of my coaching mentality.
I like it.
Commit to somebody, I can't coach them.
I wanted to go back to something that you said a minute ago when you're talking about your circles of love or the relationships.
Yes.
And what about the single people? Because I am married and I do have children and, my extended family, I have a big extended family. I'm one of 10 kids and, I'm an extrovert. So I have made a lot of friends in the different places that I've lived, which has been quite a few places actually. But I also have friends who are my age who never married, and it could have been me. I was 31 when we got married. So what does that circle of relationship look like for someone who, say, is single and maybe doesn't live in close proximity with their family?
Well, I'm always amazed at how people have responded to remote work because they find it difficult. And I relate that to exactly the relationship you're talking about. We had a really strong relationship because we spent time. College is always a good place, right? We were roommates, and we went 2 or 3 years, so we had experience. We had common ground. But then, guess what? I moved to New York. You moved to Chicago, and suddenly it's a long distance relationship. Well, that doesn't mean it can't work. It just means it takes extra effort.
Yeah.
I look at working from home the same way. I go, it doesn't mean we don't have a relationship, but it is different. And I need to respect that difference. For instance, what you just said about friends who now are not married. You have a family. Can you share that interest? Of course you can, but I guarantee you that at some point there has to be that level of common ground that you still share. Now, the less common ground there is, the less likely it is the relationship is going to survive. But
Mm-hmm.
I tell you that I have relationships that are 1 day a year relationships.
Yep. Oh yeah.
There's somebody comes to town and they get in touch and they go, let's have coffee, and I go, sure, and we catch up, right? I find out about them. And by the way, I do the questions, empathetic questioning, and then they disappear for another year. We may or may not do a little bit of social media, but I don't like social media as a way to maintain relationships.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm willing to accept that for what it is. But I also know that there are people that I've been in my life that I've made the decision that they are toxic to me. They are dysfunctional. And by the way, I'm very honest about it. My sister and I she died, had a toxic relationship, and I refused to interact with her in any way
Mm,
because she sucked the life out of me. And she used our relationship as the way to do that. And at some point, it didn't matter that she was related to me as a sister. It mattered that the relationship was toxic. So we can't allow people to impinge upon us saying, I'm related to you, you owe me.
mm,
And you owe me time and energy because whenever I get in a bind, I'm going to call you. And you better come because we're related. I was like, yeah, no.
mhm.
That first couple of times, yeah. After that, no. So we have to look at people not as having familiar relationship, but whether or not it's a meaningful relationship that is reciprocal. There has to be reciprocity in relationships.
Right.
I'm giving to you, that's okay. Except there has to be some give back, right? We've got to do a give and take. Now, if you pay more this time than last time, I'm okay with that. But at some point, I need to see that there's at least something coming back to me. And by the way, people don't like that. They like to say, "Well, I'm self-sacrificing." No, you're not. You just keep telling yourself that because it pisses you off that you're not getting anything outside of the relationship and you're not willing to cut it loose. And my deal is that's hurting you. You are becoming bitter. Now, you can disguise it, you can hide it. And by the way, every once in a while I run across a martyr. But let me tell you what happened to martyrs. They were killed.
Mhm.
No martyr lived. They wouldn't have been a martyr if they'd lived. They were killed. So I look at that and I go, yeah, the outcome is not good for being a martyr. As long as
Mm.
you know that, okay.
One of the things that I was thinking as you were talking about the closest that you can feel with people when you have similar interests and shared experiences, I feel like I can compartmentalize a little bit. Like I have my friends who we have kids who are the same age, who go to the same school, and we can connect on that level. But I have other friends who I do agree with more politically. We've had a more similar experience in the pandemic. We have, similar ideas, goals, values, and things like that. And even though they might not have kids or, the same, geographical area, that one day
Mhm.
a week or one day a month, the one day a year is what you said, coffee date, I can still feel very, very close to that person during that time.
Oh, absolutely. The common ground is there, even though you don't visit it often.
Yeah.
At fan bases, I'm always curious. I'm a Bears fan, which is like being hit in the head with a crowbar every day. But I share a allegiance with people that I don't know because periodically we all gather in the stadium, or I've got a group I watch the games with, and
Hmm.
we may not have a lot of outside interest, but that also is boundaries, right? We're all there to cheer the Bears on. That's our common ground, and it's strong enough to get me to go to a stadium with 60,000 other fans. By the way, fans is short for fanatic, and you show up and you act like an idiot cheering on your team. But that can be a powerful common ground. So no, it just depends. However, that's good for 16 Sundays a year.
Yeah.
Then I don't want to hear from you.
Hmm.
I don't want to talk about them after that. Anyway, but we get to establish those compartmentalized friends, absolutely, and they're valuable. They really are. And they're valuable as long, again, as you feel that reciprocity, that connection. Once that dissipates for whatever reason, time to let them go because hanging on really serves no purpose.
Right. Or let them back off into the other rings.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
How does this connect to the performance coaching?
Well, because we establish our common ground, a common goal, and that becomes our connection. And from that point on, it's not going to go outside that, by the way. I'm not going to be friends with you.
Mhm.
that suddenly reduces and it's amazing how people want to become friends because they think you'll like them better. And it's not my job to like you. I can respect you, and maybe I will like you. Likability is a good trait to have, but with leaders in particular, I will have people in the coaching program that are not likable. And it was interesting. I had a conversation a couple of years ago with the president of a company, and he said, Paul, I really enjoy the coaching sessions, but I would never go to dinner with you. And I said, what makes you think I want to have dinner with you? And he was like, really? I said, yeah, really. We don't want to do it, but believe me, the issue of having internal coaches versus external coaches, huge difference. If I'm your employee, you look at me and what I have to say completely differently than you do when I'm an independent contractor.
Mm.
Yeah, it's psychological, but so much of relationships is psychological. Positivity, negativity. I mean, we're constantly or should be reevaluating our relationship. I tell people at the end of the year, you need to sit down and look at those relationships. You need to reflect because guess what? They're taking time and energy and resources in some fashion. And you need to make a determination. Is that where I want to spend my time, energy, and resources next year? So you list out, like I said, I like the circles. I use it all the time, the circles of love. You list them out and you place them in those circles. And you can move people. You can say, I really enjoy talking to that person every month. Now I'm going to move them into every 6 months. Why? Something, maybe I don't enjoy it as much anymore. And by the way, the pandemic has done that. It's created a different set of barriers to relationships. And so you have to look at that and go, am I willing to tolerate that barrier that we didn't have before? It just didn't exist. Suddenly it does now. And I need to determine whether or not it is okay with me from a well-being perspective. Or is it starting to hurt me? Is it starting to suck energy out of me every time I talk to you? Because I can tell the tension that exists between us is a barrier that we're not able to get through. Mm. People are either able to do that to accommodate the other position or not. But if you can't, then the question is, should we continue the relationship? Because it's not meaningful and it's not healthy. Being in negative relationships, being in a toxic relationship hurts you. That works with individuals as well as organizations. You do not, if you're shortening your life with toxic relationships, and sometimes we get stuck in them for a variety of reasons. And we stay there. You constantly hear about people who are in bad marital relationship. And it's, by the way, it's for the kids. Oh my God. You know what you're doing for your kids? You're making them terrible adults. Because if you think they don't recognize the tension and the stress in that relationship, they're actually impacted by that. So don't pretend it doesn't exist and don't pretend you can hide it. You can't. You have to acknowledge it and do something about it. If you can't do anything about it, then perhaps it's time to say, I'm going to give this relationship up. It's bad for both of us, but I know it's bad for me. I think it's bad for you. I can tell you, I had one coaching client that at the end of a year, I enter into annual contracts. I said, look, this is not working. You have not done a single thing that we agreed you were going to do over 12 months. And I've been on your butt every other week. Mm-hmm. And he was like, I really am getting a lot out of this. I was like, okay. I said, well, I'll tell you the deal. I'm increasing the coaching fee for you by 30%. And he said, well, for everybody? No, just for you. This is my pain in the ass premium. Now, I'll continue with you because I can at least justify my time based on the additional money. We did this for 2 years in a row. And every year I said, Another 30% increase. He would go, for everybody? No, just for you. And so the third year, I said, another 30%. He said, well, I can't afford that. Good, quit. Now, I guess I could have bailed. I mean, I should have. I know in retrospect, I should have said the money doesn't matter. But I thought, let me see if I can charge this guy more money and he will actually engage in the coaching process. It kind of was a litmus test. Didn't work.
Mhm.
In retrospect, I should have cut him loose, but what? The money was good. I have to be mercenary enough to want to get paid. And I get getting paid. I was like, okay. So we would have an interesting conversation every other week. And then the following 2 weeks, I would go, what did you do? He would say nothing. I'd chew his ass. And then we'd move on.
So,
It was a abusive relationship on both sides.
so speaking to coaches, life coaches, performance coaches, productivity coaches, at what point would you consider a client to be a toxic relationship you should cut out?
To be in my toxic relationship with me,
No,
when
like
they,
if you're speaking to coaches, like when would you
yes.
advise someone cut someone out?
Oh, what you can tell. If first, every coach needs to have a good BS detector. It has to be built in because your clients will lie to you if they think they can get away with it. And again, I believe that the test is commitment. That's why I tell people I'm an acquired taste. Only 20% of the people who are referred to me ever go into a coaching relationship because after we've had the first conversation, they recognize that I know that this is going to be hard. And the hardest people to coach are those that are successful. Because when you tell them, I want you to change because that's how you get better, they are resistant.
It's working for me.
You say what?
Would they just tell you, but why would you break something that's not broken or try to fix something that's
Absolutely.
not broken? Okay.
And that's exactly what they're saying. And their response is, well, I wanted you to, and I go, do what? Tell me what you want to do in this coaching relationship, because if you're already successful, then I'm not sure why you're here. But let me tell you why you should be here. Being successful has nothing to do with tomorrow. Tomorrow is a different day, and it requires a different set of skills. If you want to talk to me about potential, stay in the program. If you want to talk to me about legacy, stay in the program. If you want to tell me how successful you are, don't waste my time. I'm not impressed. Those are the two things I want to talk about. And if the person says, okay, I've been thinking about it, because what I do, we do a taster. I believe we do one taster, right? So we got 1 hour, and this is the conversation we have. And at the end of that, I say, you now need to think about whether or not you're willing to commit, because it's a 12-month deal. And if you bail after we start, you pay me the whole 12 months, even though we might have only been doing this a month. However, if at the end of this, we did not accomplish what we set out to accomplish, you pay me nothing. Commitment, right? I'm committing compensation. You should commit compensation and time and energy. So that's how we get to it. I mean, that's how I get to it. And when I recognize that you are no longer committed, it will be when you're not doing what you've agreed to do, the action plan. Here's the goal. We've got a deadline, 12 months. Then we break it down into the action steps. Here's what you're going to do to achieve the goal. We may have 2 or 3 goals, no more than 3, by the way, 3 goals at one time, right? For instance, everybody believes that as a leader, they're a great communicator. That's because they believe in telepathy. They believe if they think it, you know it, you hear it. So the first thing we work on is effective communication. Then we do something different. We do a 360-degree review of the people that report to you, and it comes through me. So it's anonymous. And based off of that, you realize that you suck. Because
so you're the third party.
Absolutely. They're not telling him or her, but they will tell me because I tell them, do you want this person to get better? And they say, please God, let him get better. They're killing me. And you go, then you need to take this 360-degree review and be honest. It's coming back to me. I'm going to collate all of them, and then I'm going to sit down and tell him the results. Shocks every leader.
You're not stroking their ego anymore.
Oh, absolutely not. No stroking. We're through with that. We're like, by the way, I'm going to tell you the truth, the fool, because I've got the psychological safety to do it. They don't. And everybody goes, no, that's not true. Oh, yeah, it's absolutely true. You know how I know this? Because of your reaction to what they just told you. You've never heard this before, that you suck, that you can't communicate, that no one, whenever someone gets done with a conversation with you, they have to get an interpreter to tell them what you said. Oh, absolutely. That you don't explain your expectations. We're not sure what the course of action is, all of these things. So yeah, I go through the entire litany of first ethics. It's always interesting how many team members look at their leader and go, I can't trust him with a secret. Tell him something, he will tell someone else. Oh, seriously? And you think they're going to tell you the truth anyway. So based upon that, so it's not my opinion, it's their opinion, we now are able to start working on improving. It's very simple, but very hard.
It sounds like you are a tough love coach.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And by the way, I'm as committed as you are. But once we've agreed on commitment, then it is not optional. You can bail. I'm okay with that. No one should be forced to stay in a coaching program. Even if some people are, because their boss has told them, if you don't get better, I'm going to fire you. And here somebody's going to help you get better. That's a very reluctant person, obviously, to have in a coaching program. But they also know that the outcome is necessary, and they know that I'm the one that's going to produce that outcome. They can't do it wrong. And so, no, it is tough caring.
I want to hear about how and why you started working from home. Do you want to go back in time and tell us a little bit more about how you ended up being a former lawyer?
Sure. Well, first I went to prison, and I was a lawyer before that. I love being a lawyer, by the way. I'm an adrenaline junkie, and being a trial lawyer is the ultimate in adrenaline. You're in front of the jury. In fact, I often tell people it's as close to trial by combat as you can get. It's hand-to-hand combat with an adversary on the other side. There's a referee, the judge, make sure that you don't kill each other, and then you've got a jury. And it's your job to represent your client and convince the jury, persuade the jury to not only see your side, but to agree with it. And the concept of this is interesting. People don't understand how this occurs because we see too much court TV and we believe that it's about the facts. No, it's about the narrative. The narrative is what the jury wants to hear, the story. You have to have the facts, but you have to weave it into the narrative, and you have to be able to give them the story. So it's performance art. And if you're good at it, you emotionally connect with the jury because people make decisions based on their emotional response to the other person. We cloak that in rationality, right? But that's not how decisions are made. We start with, I want that. Now can I justify it? And that's how we purchase stuff, right? I want that shirt. Can I justify it? Yes, it'll make me look good on Zoom. We'll buy it. You don't need it. You got 40 shirts. I need that shirt, right? So the concept of connecting emotionally with the jury was, you had to develop a narrative that included the facts. And I told them every trial, I took the jury on the hero's journey, right? Because my client had to become the hero or he would lose. Now the other side's trying to show that he's not the hero; he's the villain. So I would craft a hero's journey, a narrative that I would then take the jury on with me. And if I was successful at the end, they would find my client prevailed. It's amazing to me that that is something that leaders need to develop, because we seem to believe if we can pull out an Excel sheet and show people the numbers, that we're going to get what we want. And the first thing I tell leaders is behind every number is a face. And if you can't connect with that face, because that face generates that number. That number it does not exist by itself, and it certainly doesn't exist because of you. It exists because of the person who generated that number. And your obligation is to connect with them so that they understand the purpose of this journey you're on together. And that's a narrative. So that I bring to the conversation with leaders. I say, tell me your narrative. What narrative? I get up in front of them and I tell them the facts. And I'm like, yeah, that's not going far. By the way, that's why only 30% of your workforce is engaged. The other 70% don't care. They show up for the paycheck, right? In fact, according to Gallup, 20% are actively disengaged, which means they're generating a toxic environment. So if you think that this is working, look at your workforce and the lack of engagement and come to the realization, because it's true, it's not. And once you know that, do something different. Engage people on an emotional level. By the way, that to me, with the remote work and the impact of the pandemic, makes that more important than ever. Because I can actually escape some of that if I see you every day, right? We have a little socialization going on. But when I can't do that, when we're not face to face, I lose that opportunity. I better do something else. And that's taking you on the journey and telling you how important you are as a part of that journey, telling you to be part of the purpose, establish what the purpose is. You know, Simon Sinek says it well. He says, the question everyone has but seldom asks is why? Why do you want me to do that? Oh, it's because you're going to pay me. Well, all right, I'll take my check. I'll do exactly what I have to do to get the check. Stop. That's why we 70% unengaged. They're not connected to the journey, the purpose.
Right. I interviewed a woman a few weeks ago, Katie Matthews. She works for the presentation company, and that's what they do is they help leaders learn how to tell the story, the narrative. So taking figures and facts and charts and turning it into a journey of a human and, why it matters. And it was really interesting to think about that. And like you're talking, it's almost like theatrics, but you have to be able to engage with your clients, your customers.
You do. And one of the things that I recommend or did recommend was that leaders take an improvisation course.
Really?
Oh, absolutely. The interesting thing, and my wife and I did this together, and I am a strong advocate after doing that. First, she was fantastic at it, and I was terrible. I'm a pretty good speaker, and put me in front of a group, and I'll just rattle on like now. I can just rattle on for hours, right? And I'm going to tell you something. The deal with improvisation is it's based on giving and taking. So you have to give. Someone takes, but then they give back. And based off of that, the performance goes. And my wife is a tremendous giver. I'm a tremendous taker. The problem was I'm not a tremendous giver. She could do both. And I struggled with it. And I learned by going through this process how important it was to make the conversation flow, to make it work, the relationship work requires that give and take, literally.
Mm-hmm.
And so I
Willing
think
and able to change the gears on a turn. Like you weren't able to control where that story was going because there was another person involved.
absolutely, and it goes and it amazed me where it would go. You never knew. But isn't that the exclamation point on relationships? Is we think we know where it's going to go and it goes someplace else, but we're good because we're doing it together. We're still moving together. I look at that in the workplace and I go, that's the relationship you want.
Hmm.
I tell you that when we look for innovation and initiative, we don't get it because they don't see any reason to provide. It's not that they can't, they see no reason to provide it. In a give and take relationship, they will give you initiative because it's a part of the thing. Just like improv, it's going to be creative whether you like it or not, unless you stop. I mean, you can stop it and not participate. But if you're going to participate in improvisation, it is creative inherently. And I believe that that's the relationship we should be struggling with in the workforce. Instead of, I'm managing you. Nobody wants to be managed, by the way. We've gotten over that. I'm managing you, and as long as I can see you at work, I believe you're producing. And 70% are not engaged. Okay? It's not working. The system's broken.
Adults need autonomy.
Yeah.
It comes to I remember a time when I was working and all of a sudden we got overwhelmed and they needed to mandate overtime and they needed everybody to be willing to work, to pick 2 hours a week extra that they could work and it was required. And man, to get those extra 2 hours felt like drudgery. But when at other times they said, hey, we are overwhelmed, we need more help, who was willing to volunteer? We will, sometimes they would give us like an award. Maybe they would give us like, if you work these extra hours during our extreme need, we'll give you some time off at another time and you can have some, and I was signing up right and left and I would work 6 to 8, 10, 15 extra hours some weeks because I felt like I was needed and appreciated for being willing to step up to the plate. But it was really hard and it must have been a psychological thing. Those extra 2 hours when it was mandated, that sucked.
People don't want to be told. Like I said, no one wants to be managed. And again, if I come to you and our relationship is good and I say, let me tell you why, right? Why I need this. And that word need triggers a psychological response.
Mm-hmm.
But first you have to feel the relationship merits you responding to that need. But you're absolutely right. What I find interesting is the reward that employees are looking for is recognition. They want to be recognized for the effort they're putting out. We say thank you when we're in at dinner and someone passes us the salt. We say thank you. At the end of a hard day's work, nobody says thank you. They say, you know what they say? See you tomorrow. That's like an invitation back to hell. It's been a miserable day. I hate it. Oh, let me come back tomorrow and let's repeat this experience instead of, hey, look, do I appreciate what you've done today? Yes. How hard is that? And yet we don't do it. By the way, men in particular don't do it. Women are much better leaders, team leaders, because of the empathy. Guys have been taught not to be empathetic and they have to learn it. It's a skill set, but you need it today because of the situation with the pandemic and the impact it's had. You need to be more empathetic. And if you can't do that, learn it. But by the way, it's interesting to me how many people are quitting, right? The great resignation. Yeah. This is a report card. It's a report card on the company where 50% of the employees quit. What are you kidding me? So instead of being upset about that, How about if you look at why they left?
Hmm.
Oh, it was more money. No, I guarantee you that was not the primary reason. Primary reason, and the research shows it, Gallup does an employee engagement every couple of years. Everybody leaves, 50% leave because of a bad boss.
Yep.
Dead bang, 50%. Now, if you're not paying appropriately and you don't have any benefits, it's a toxic workplace. But the toxicity of most workplaces are generated by your immediate boss. And that's it. And if you look at them and you go, 50% of your team left, it's on you. And I'm not going to tolerate that behavior, whatever it is. But I can guarantee you, you're a command and control dinosaur from the industrial age, and you are now extinct.
Hmm.
You are. They are. They will not survive. The pandemic gave everybody the opportunity to take a pause and say, "Am I satisfied with the way I'm being treated? Not with my job, the way I'm being treated." And if the answer was no, I'm bailing. Okay, let's take a look at how we're treating people. They're not engaged because we are treating them poorly, right? We continue to hire the wrong people to be in charge. Gallup's poll, 85% of all managers are not appropriate for the position they hold.
Hmm.
85%. That's because we promote the person who was a good individual performer and believe that they now have the skill set to be a leader.
Hmm.
Completely different jobs, two
Right.
completely different attitudes. Anyway, too much. I'm sorry, I got sidetracked on
Well,
this.
it makes me think about like, oh gosh, was it Chapman who wrote the Love Languages book? And I guess you have to find with work, it gets a little fuzzy, but like you can say an empathetic thank you at the end of the day and be sincere, but not be appropriately, compensating your workers. And so there has to be
Yeah. Oh, there does.
balance there.
You can't short first. There's this thing called the internet that allows everybody to know what they should be making.
Right.
So don't think it's this thing used to be, don't tell anyone I just gave you a raise because, that's secret. I'm like, what are you, insane? First, oh my God, if you're a sales guy, you're telling everyone. But clearly people now know their value. And once they know their value and you're not meeting that value, that's a problem. So yeah, if you are undervaluing your people and not giving them appropriate compensation and benefits, expect them to leave. Because
Hmm.
well, think about it. Amazon and Walmart are the two largest employers, and they have now. My friends and I used to have arguments about minimum wage being too low. The minimum wage has now been established at $18 an hour.
Where
Why?
you live?
No, yeah, well, because of Amazon. The marketplace is now dictating the minimum wage.
Mm.
It doesn't matter what the government says it is. It matters what the marketplace says it is. And the marketplace says $18. Work for McDonald's, $14. Right? Okay. And I'm slaving away in this sweatshop. And I'm thinking, what am I doing this for? I don't even get compensated. So, yes, there is a balance.
Hmm. Yeah. When McDonald's is paying more than you're getting, is going to be a tricky one to pull that off. Paul,
But,
let's
and
talk.
it's,
Oh, go ahead.
no, that's fine.
I think we should talk about your work from home journey.
Sure. Well, I said it earlier. I've been working from home. I've been socially distancing for over 30 years. That's because I have a national coaching practice, and therefore my clients are from California to New York and from Chicago to Florida. And so I determined, obviously, that I was not, as much as I love face to face coaching, it wasn't going to work. So I established phone coaching. It was like, okay, is this the best way to do it? No, but it's the only way that I can do this. And so I established that early on. Heck, and so I've been doing it now 2001 that I've been coaching by phone, and it's effective. And I've managed to establish, obviously, I've got myself a nice office, I've got a window, I get light. I figured out what had to be a part of my environment to allow me to do this. And by the way, one of the problems with remote work is the fact that the environment that people have been forced into is not adaptable to work. It's a closet, right? They've got a fold away desk, and they've opened their laptop, and they're in there. And of course, there's the dog, and there's the kid, and there's the wife. And by the way, we have a life going on here. Your work just happens to be a part of it. I'm fortunate enough I can shut my door if my wife is home. I don't have any children, don't have any pets, but I've figured out the environment that I'm in dictates to a great degree how I react and interact with people during the day. And by the way, I have, on some days, I'll have 8 coaching sessions. So I have 8 hours of coaching.
Wow.
And the guy who gets, or the person who gets the 8th hour is entitled to the same level of enthusiasm and interaction as the first person in the morning.
Do you do them back to back?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I'll do back to back. And then I'll have a light week. This is a nice light week. After the holiday, people bail. They're like, I got things to do rather than talk to you. Okay. But yeah, I'll do back to back, starting at 7 o'clock in the morning, finish up at 3 or 4 in the afternoon. And because, again, I'm a big one about energy, and I am going to do a few things in every coaching session. And I believe that interaction is something you can plan, right? So one of the things is I'm going to be curious. I absolutely want to find out how you're doing this last couple of weeks. And by the way, I don't reject personal issues, because I believe you're the whole person. And if you're having difficulty at home, I guarantee you it will overlap into the job. We need to talk about that, especially during the pandemic, when everybody was at high levels of stress because of uncertainty. We all hate uncertainty, and the pandemic was the ultimate uncertainty, and with it, the possibility of death. So, talking to someone and talking to them about their family, because suddenly the kids weren't in school.
Yep.
And everybody was here. And again, I wasn't set up for an office at home, right? And I don't know how, I can't even though I want furniture, it's going to be 6 months before it gets here. So we dealt with all of that and dealt with what you had to do to survive this very unique experience, working from home, something most people didn't do. Now, over 40% of the working population can work from home. Prior to the pandemic, it was down to 8 or 9% who actually did. It's changed, of course it did. But you also have to change your mindset, because things are different. First, the level of socialization is gone. Zoom is fantastic, but we don't socialize the same way as we would in the office. By the way, the interesting statistics show that the normal office day only has 5 hours of productive work. Why? Interruptions, disruptions, meetings, phone calls that aren't productive, all of the things that, to a great degree, went away when we were working at home. So I look at it and I go, the hybrid model, I think, is where we're going to go with this, because I think you do the hard tasks at home and the soft socialization tasks for 2 days a week on site.
Did you say 3 to 5 hours?
Oh, 3.5.
3.5. Wow.
Oh, yeah,
Yep.
3.5.
That sounds similar to things that I've heard about school. Kids at school get about 2 hours of actual focused academic work. And that's one thing that homeschoolers will be like, we can do school in 2 hours and then have the rest of the day. Yeah.
But it is the socialization factor, I think, at school that's more important, because that's where kids are learning to socialize, right? And that's extraordinarily important. I think that's where most families suffered, or most children suffered, because of the pandemic.
Right.
obviously, as a full grown adult who has a job, socialization can come to you in other ways, but the pandemic eliminated a lot of that. So, certainly, working from home was something that had to be overcome, adapted to. And I think that people have, not everyone. I love the fact that some people actually took a second job.
During the pandemic?
Oh, absolutely. Because you know why? They figured out that their actual work only took 3 or 4 hours a day. So they said, I'm going to get that done and I'm going to take another job.
Mm-hmm.
Players just were incensed by that. And I was like, why? They're taking advantage. If you haven't established a job with the expectations that take up 8 hours of their day, why are you upset with them? Be upset with yourself. So yeah, but we've gone through this period. And by the way, I don't think it's over. Right? The pandemic is not through with us. We may
No.
the pandemic, but there's another. I look at it. I've been around long enough to understand how the flu is. Every year I get a flu shot. It has nothing to do with the flu that's coming. It has to do with some protection based on the flu that just came, right? Because why? Well, the flu mutates, and COVID is going to mutate. It is mutating. So I'm not sure that we're done with this, and I assume that working from home is still going to be an issue because I think that returning to the office is based on the ability of the workforce to feel safe. And if you can't convince them that they're safe, they're not coming back. They'll leave.
Yeah.
Well, is suddenly a bigger issue than it ever has been, and employers are struggling with that because we don't know how to handle it. And managers definitely don't know how to handle it because now they have to deal with the family. And we've always separated a very clean cut between work and non work. Now they've intermingled in a way that we can't avoid it. Why? What happens there impacts work. So when you take that and you look at 85% of the managers were terrible managers to begin with, you got to do something to improve their level of empathy so they can interact, especially remotely. So we're asking a lot of people who have not been given the training or development to do it. Companies have got to get this right. Otherwise, the work from home experience will never be as good as it can be.
What would you say to those managers right now if you were to give them some suggestions because they might be listening?
Sure. Well, first I would say you have too much on your plate and you may be really good at managing a team. The question is no one wants to be managed. They want to be coached and led. So let's talk about you going to your supervisor and saying, I need development. If you want me to do this, I need to have the training and development so I can actually do it. Because right now I'm doing a crappy job and I know it. And my team knows it. And by the way, they weren't engaged before they're leaving now. It's not even they're engaged, they're leaving. And I need to stop them leaving because, oh my God, how do we get the work done? Well, we don't if they're not there. So the Great Resignation has now forced the issue of what the skill set should be for a team leader. And it is absolutely different than it was pre-pandemic. By the way, it should have been different pre-pandemic, but it wasn't forced. So the industrial age concept of command and control continued to be how people managed. And everybody just kind of took it. Now the pandemic has changed everyone's opinion about taking it. They're not going to take it. Why? It's now about well-being, and I don't think you care about me enough. If you don't care about me enough, I'm going to go someplace where they do. And that's where the Great Resignation starts to have impact. This is when companies say, all right, to stop this flow of talent, we need to change the way we interact with our workforce. And I said, and I didn't finish, the concept of my coaching, every coaching call. First, very curious. Second, I wanted to make you smile. So I would say anything, if it depends on who I was talking to, I would say something outrageous that I could tell by you either laughed or smiled because it gave you that break that you might not get during the day of putting out fires.
Mm.
So that to me is a part of the leader's job is to make you feel better, take care of you, give you the resources you need, inspire you. And how about this? How about we actually celebrate a little bit? End of the week should be a celebration day. That should be the ugly sweater day, right? Everybody's get this, and I'm going to gather everybody. And I know it's by Zoom, but by the way, Grubhub has just dropped off a meal for you. Oh my God, why? Because I want you to be feeling better about working here and for me. And so I want that slush fund that allows me to send you a meal. How about this? How about once a month, I'm going to send you and your family a meal because
Nice.
we're all there together. Concepts, very simple with me. I believe the 3 A's: attraction, attention, appreciation. And attraction has nothing to do with how you look. It has to do with the positive energy that you put out to engage people. If you have positive energy and you're enthusiastic, you're competent. You got to be competent in your job or people don't respect you. So as a leader, you want to be positive, enthusiastic, you want to be competent, you want to be likable, and you want to be empathetic. That attracts people to you. The second part of that is attraction, attention. I'm going to pay attention to you. I'm going to ask you how you're doing. By the way, 2 things. Ask somebody how they're doing in the work context. It's basically about performance. Ask somebody how they're feeling. Completely different conversation. Words matter. So I always say, by the way, we've got to have performance, but that's a given. And I can track your performance most of the time. Do not put spyware on my camera. All you're telling me is you don't trust me to do my job.
That does not help morale.
Oh no, and believe me, I'm not an idiot. I'll figure out how to do what I want to do, except now I'm going to do it with a different intent. All right? So no, don't do that. Don't tell me you don't trust me to do my job. If you don't trust me, fire me. I don't understand keeping somebody employed you don't trust. Tell me what I need to do. Tell me what the expectations are. Give me the resources to do it, and then let me do my job. And by the way, the concept of you're going to pay me for hours is stupid. You should pay me for outcome. Isn't that what you want? I had a client that called me and said, I have a specific, someone told me to get in touch with you. I have a specific issue. Here's the issue. I need it resolved. I said, okay. I said, let me think about it. Now that I understand, let me think about it. I called him the next day. I said, here's the answer. And he was like, that'll work. Cool. I sent him the bill. He was outraged. He contacted me, said, how dare you send me that amount for a bill? You only did this for a day. I said, were you paying me for my time? Because I could have stretched it for 2 weeks, right? Or were you paying me for the outcome? He said, well, I wanted the outcome. Think about the amount I charged you and the outcome and tell me, is it worth it? He said, yes. Let's not talk about hours anymore. That's not what I'm interested in. I'm not interested in you being at work for 8 hours, but only working 3 hours. What I see is I want the outcome. And if I get that, I don't care. If you want to work 2 jobs and still give me everything I want and need, why should I be upset? Well, by the way, would you be upset is after the 8 hours I had a part-time job? No. It would be, why? Well, that's not my time. Oh my God, your time? That's what you're paying me for. You need to pay me more, right?
So we're talking about the industrial mindset, like the tracking productivity
Absolutely.
and tracking time. And if you were to speak to these managers now, or I guess maybe the decision makers about such things, what paradigm shift are we looking at here?
We need to go to self-directed teams. Self-directed teams have been shown to be innovative. They have initiative. They work as a team. By the way, Google has done the research to show that the composition of a team is what makes it high performing. And we're looking for high performing teams. That's what we want, right? Get more out of the team. Self-directed teams suddenly have flexibility and they have autonomy. Those are two things that everyone craves. You still have to get the work done, and everybody knows that. So tell me what you want me to do. Give me the resources to do it. Tell me when it has to be done, and then leave me alone. And I will produce. And we're going to do it by a team because that's how we do work, right? Everybody. And teams will support each other more than they will support a manager. I don't care about you as my manager. In fact, I might hate you. I love my team. And I will not let them down. I will do my part to continue to belong to this team. So that's where the bonding is. So we've got a self-directed team, but we also know that other things matter. For instance, development is a big deal. To expect a team leader or manager to be in charge of the team's development is stupid. They're not equipped for that. They don't know what that means. They haven't been trained for it. They've been trained to see how many widgets you produce. That they're still back in the industrial age assembly line, watching you produce widgets. We're not doing that anymore. So if you want development, I'm going to send somebody out who specializes in development. It's their skill set. And I'm going to sit down with each individual team member and we're going to develop a package, a program for you that allows you to do what you tell me you want to do. Now, by the way, if you want to be a ditch digger, I'm absolutely okay with that. Why wouldn't I be? But also, if we suddenly get a machine that digs a ditch, you need to be able to operate the machine, right? You've got to be relevant. But other than that, if you tell me I don't want to advance, I don't want to get promoted, I'm happy. I'm okay with that, but most people aren't. And so you take a specialist and you say, your job is to go to every team in the company and develop programs for everyone who wants to get better, to improve. And that's your job. By the way, I'm going to send out another specialist. And that specialist is going to be about conflict resolution. And so if there's conflicts on the team, and why wouldn't there be? We're all individuals. And you realize you have a conflict, instead of fighting with each other, you're going to call HR and say, send the conflict resolver out. And they're going to be, what do? They specialize in conflict resolution. And they're going to come out and they're going to help you resolve the problem. So we have all of these specialists that need to be the support system for the self-directed team. And when we need them, they show up. We need to have a facilitator. Why? We need resources. We're interacting with other teams. We need to have facilitation. Whenever we're having a dispute that between teams, we need a mediator. By the way, I'd like to have a coach. But to expect the manager to be a good coach, they don't have the skill set. Why are we doing this to the manager? It's not because they don't want to be, it's because they are not trained. So guess what? I want to have a coach. Good. Here's your coach.
An external coach? Is that what you're talking about?
Of course. Yeah. And you go, I'm now your coach. You fulfill the needs of people in today's workforce by recognizing what they are, not telling them what they are, recognizing what they are, turn it into a self-directed team so they do the work, but then you give them all this extra stuff that they need through the specialists that are provided by the organization.
So earlier you said that manager could head to some training, development. Are we talking about conflict resolution training and management programs, or what kinds of things were you proposing there?
Well, first, it's interesting that once you get back to Gallup, Gallup has shown that managers are as 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 poorly engaged as the workforce. There's only 35% of managers who are engaged. The other 65% are either not engaged or actively disengaged. So first, I'm going to weed out the working dead. If you are not capable of performing on a self-directed team, and there are a lot of people who aren't, they want to be managed. Why? Because that means I don't have any accountability. You tell me exactly what I have to do, and I'm going to do it and then stop. I will have no initiative, no innovation, no creativity. I'm just going to do this work and collect my check. Sorry, not accepted anymore. You've got to be committed to the self-directed team. The same thing with managers. Take a look at the managers and you go, if you have the personality to be a coach, we're going to develop you, train you, so that's your job. And you will then become a coach. If you've got the personality to be a facilitator, we're going to give you the training so you can do that. Right now, to try to train a manager to do all of these things would kill them. They're not suited to all these roles. Nobody is. These are specialty roles. You start talking about development programs, they're like, what? I have no idea what that means. Of course you don't. Why would you? By the way, I'm going to put you in charge of strategy. Strategy? What the hell? I don't really think about strategy. I know how to execute to get something done. So we keep making their jobs so hard they can't do it. Their disengagement cascades down to the disengagement of the people on their teams.
Well, that goes back to when you said you have too many things on your plate.
Oh, absolutely. I think the managers, first, I don't believe a lot of managers. Well, first, I've already told you that only a third of the managers are engaged. That means everybody else who's a manager is not happy. A lot of, you know how we promote people? They were really good as an individual producer, contributor. We make them a manager and think that they now know the skill set to lead people. They don't.
Different.
They struggle. They struggle. They don't know what to do. First they think they're going to do it all themselves. Right? So they try to work themselves to death. Then they become bitter because the team is not giving them what they want, right? They're not producing. And they can't understand why. And by the way, before they were promoted, they were part of the team, right? I mean, we all talked together. We went out bowling on Friday. We went to each other's parties. I become the manager. I'm excluded. Sorry, you're one of them now. You've now taken the pleasure that they had from being a member of a team away from them.
Hmm.
They struggle with this, and we don't help them. See, this is back to throwing them into the deep end and hoping they can swim, because they were dog paddling in the shallow part. So we figured you can swim the English Channel. Go.
Oh, right.
And they're like, I don't know what to do here.
It sounds like a company culture thing, though. Like, not all companies are going to have that culture, but majority maybe do.
Well, of course. And by the way, again, back to the engagement issue. The engagement issue is across all industries, across all companies. When I do consulting on a company-wide basis, I tell them 20% of your workforce is actively disengaged. They're creating toxic culture. Nobody believes that. We get all of the managers together and I go, divide your team of 10 or 20 into 3 categories. Committed employees, those that are absolutely not committed, that you would fire yesterday if you could, and then you got the rest. They do it like that. They know who they are. One of my articles in Forbes is HR is the 21st century union. They stop managers from getting rid of people who need to be gone. And I understand that there's some reasons for that, but I also know that at some point, everyone knows who the working dead are, that are disengaged and toxic. They've got to go. They will infect everybody on the team. Mm-hmm. And we keep giving everyone the same raise. It's like, you kidding me? Everybody gets 3%. That guy didn't do anything and he gets 3%. I'm busting my butt and I only get 3%. Talk about destroying morale. And when you get rid of one of the working dead, the first thing that the team will ask you is, why did it take you so long? And you're like, well, why didn't you tell me that? No, that's not our job. That's your job. You're the leader. You should be able to tell that that person is not doing the right thing. And by the way, once that happens, they also question the leader's competency. How could you let this go on?
Good but question. Then there's also like the picking up the slack. Like now we have to do more work. So are you going to replace that person? Yeah.
And yet you had mentioned it when you were asked to do overtime.
Yeah.
It was okay. I guarantee you that getting rid of one of the working dead and you say, listen, it's going to take us 2 or 3 months to hire a replacement. They're like, not a problem. Mm-hmm. Having that person gone makes my day better. Mm-hmm. It's true. The team will tolerate that. And to a certain degree, obviously, they still want you to find a replacement. But remember, we're really only working 3.5 hours a day.
Right.
We can pick up a little slack if we're motivated to do so.
Hey, I want to change gears. I'll let you clear the air because you mentioned that you went to prison and we didn't talk about that at all. So how did you end up being a coach? What happened?
Well, first, again, when I came out, I looked at my skill set and said, I'm never going to be a lawyer again. That's gone, right? Because I went to prison. And I said, well, I've got to do something. And even though I thought about being a barista, I realized that I would over-caffeinate and die. So I looked at my skill set and I said, well, first, I've got the attorney skill set, which is very much about critical thinking and communication. So I said, okay, those are valuable skill sets. But I also said, what else can I be? And I looked at the 2 terms I've already used. I looked at the concept of being the fool because I recognized that if I'd had a fool in my life and listened to them, probably wouldn't have gone to prison. And the other,
someone who would have spoken truth to you.
Absolutely. If somebody had said, you're associating with the wrong people who are doing bad things. What the hell is wrong with you? And by the way, do you understand the impact this is going to have on your family?
Oh, yeah.
That would have been the hook. But I didn't think about it like that. And because of my self-destructive behavior, I obviously detrimental to my family, both financially and emotionally. I mean, by the time I got through defending myself in 2 trials, I left my family financially destitute. In prison, I had a wife and 2 sons in high school. I used their college education funds up, and I left them second mortgage on the house. Just everything was terrible. But even worse was the emotional impact that they suffered from finding out I was a crook. I mean, they didn't know. And when they knew, and this was a very public trial, the neighbors knew, the friends knew, the community knew. And the emotional impact was devastating. My mother actually told everybody I died. Rather than, no, just believe me, that was the impact it had on her. It is that traumatic. So when I got out, I said, okay, adversity, resilience. Those are 2 things that I now have in spades. I also have self-awareness. 2 years realizing I put myself in prison. So the concept was, well, if I've got all these experiences and I've got these skill sets, I think that would make me a coach for people who are in charge. And it is lonely at the top. And if you have somebody who's authentic and is willing to be vulnerable and is willing to join you as a partner on a journey, then that's attractive to leaders. They can't get it within their organization most of the time because there are too many barriers, again, when the psychological safety isn't there. Mm-hmm. An outside coach who understands your self-destructive behavior, because I'm going to identify your blind spots. And as leaders, if you can't see your blind spots, that doesn't mean other people don't. And they will take advantage of those blind spots to their own betterment. So I've now got that experience to say, look, you're not going to at me. And if you're serious about this, then you're going to benefit from this relationship, this interaction. So it just worked its way out. And I put myself out there, and I told people, as I put my website together, I said, well, I need to have a page that talks about being in prison. And the guy was like, oh, no, you can't do that. I said, there's this thing called Google that all you have to do is put in my name, and guess what? It's not like this is a secret. It can't be a secret. We have no more secrets. And I said, second, I'm not doing that. And if people, that's a part of the package.
Okay. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And by the way, there are people who are turned off by that. I'm okay with it.
Yeah. You're like, I've got transferable skills, man.
Exactly. And either you believe that or you don't. And all I'm saying is we should have a conversation, and based off of that, make a determination. And by the way, the political reality enters into this. Public companies are not going to hire me because it's hard to justify hiring an ex-felon as a coach. The optics are bad.
Okay. So
my practice is with family-owned businesses in the distribution and green industry.
Okay.
And family, I think I mentioned, family-owned businesses are more dysfunctional than most.
Yeah.
Works well.
You found your niche.
Oh, absolutely. I think everyone should. You cannot be everything to everyone. It does not work. You need to be who you are and find those people who appreciate that. It's a journey. That's a journey of discovery. Most people struggle with finding their job, the one that they really want. I call it their dream job. Mm-hmm. Keep trying to satisfy somebody else. Got to satisfy yourself. Now, I understand you also have to eat. Not an idiot, right? Like I said, at some point, I was like, baristas, here I come. If I can't work it, but it worked. I stuck with it. But people who are struggling with their career need to understand that most of the time they're taking jobs that are satisfying other people. You can't do that for long. It's toxic.
Well, this is speaking to me directly. I am in a transition myself right now, so good to weigh that. I wanted to ask you one last question before we wrap it up. And
sure.
I'm looking at the clock. Just making sure you're good.
I am.
Okay. You have been doing phone conversations, and now this is the age of Zoom. Are you still doing phone? Are you able to hear the nuance that you need from the
absolutely.
phone?
I leave it up to the individual. I don't mind doing Zooms, but I found that it doesn't really make a lot of difference. Mm-hmm. I've done it for so long by phone that, like I said, I think I'm attuned to voice, energy in the voice, hesitation, all of the things that I'm listening for will be apparent within that first 30 seconds.
Mm-hmm. I have some similar experience. I was teaching, sorry, I just steamrolled over you. I was teaching ESL, and I was having conversations with adults. With the kids, they were always on camera for one of my companies. The other company, it was optional, and the adults never had camera. And some people really were turned off by that. And I got used to it really quickly. And you really can, it's almost like you're focusing in your head in a different way than you would be if you're distracted by what you're seeing in front of you.
Absolutely. And I tell and by the way, we are so good at this, human beings, that when you're talking to someone, they know when you're looking at emails.
Yes.
They do. And yep. And I tell everybody when I say, I start off every conversation by smiling, because the person can feel the smile through the phone. Mm-hmm. I know that that's weird, but it also, obviously, it's tone of voice. But if you don't start off with a smile, start off with a frown, that comes across too. Mm-hmm. So certainly, I actually have a little mirror here that before I call, I'm like, okay, because I want, first, obviously you have to take some pride in your own appearance. I mean, it doesn't matter if you're in the house, don't have any pants on, but from the waist up, put on something that makes you, why? It's professional.
Yeah.
Be a professional, but understand that people will know how and what you're doing, even if they can't see you.
Well, another thing that goes with that actually is with a phone, there's less likely to be the technological barrier, the tech problems, the oh my
Yeah,
gosh, my camera and my, microphone aren't working or something like that. With a phone call, you can dive in. And oftentimes in Zoom, and this happened with me, I think it might have even been when I met with that lady I mentioned earlier from the presentation company, Katie, is her or someone else around that we started off with a problem like right away, and like we just like immediately went into troubleshooting mode instead of like greeting each other and like saying hello. And
absolutely.
it does change that, like, I don't know, that first 30 seconds is important, and it can start off like that.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. I have all sorts of little axioms, and one of them is technology will screw you every chance it gets.
Yes.
So simple for me is better, but I'm open. Obviously, I'm open to Zoom. Doesn't really matter to me,
Mhm.
but I don't think that it impacts what I do one way or the other.
Okay.
I understand some people are much more visual, and I'm okay with that too. So yeah, but a majority of my clients are used to the phone,
Mhm.
not used to Zoom.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I usually wrap up by asking if you have any advice for someone who is thinking about working from home for the first time, something that you have overcome that has anything you want. What do you think?
Well, I think that self care is huge for anyone, but especially for people who work at home. First, you may start to feel isolated, right? Nobody else is around. I mean, I'm doing this all day long. There's nobody else here. But if you're new to this is disconcerting, and you may find that you're not taking care of yourself. It's very. I tell people I do not appreciate pandemic pounds, and I don't understand them because from my perspective is because of all of the stress that is associated with doing this from home, and there is more stress. All right, you're doing a transition from the office to your home. You're not properly set up. There's all sorts of stress that goes with this. When the family's there, when the pet's there, all of that is stress induced. You've got to be able to take care of yourself, and that requires you to do a certain thing. I believe there's very simple but difficult. First, you have to eat correctly and drink correctly, right? And that doesn't mean you can't have a drink, but it doesn't mean you can't have 5 drinks. Why? Are you supposed to be working the next day? I'm just curious. If this is Friday night, whoopee, have at it. But if you're getting ready to work, don't think that this does not have an impact, a negative impact on your ability to perform. It absolutely does. So don't do that. Don't do the self-debilitating things that we do. Everybody got into comfort food as if it was an entitlement that came with the pandemic, right? Oh my God, it's a pandemic. I get to eat more stuff, cookies. How many cookies can I eat? Stop that. Why? It has an impact on your ability to perform. I'm sorry, it just does. We're a, I don't know where I heard this. We've got a meat sack attached to our head, right? And believe me, if the meat sack is not feeling good, your mind is not going to overcome that physical disability that slows you down, if nothing else. So eat correctly, drink correctly. What else? Sleep. I mean, I think we've all heard about the importance of sleep. And those people who ignore that, because the research, I'm a research geek. The research is absolutely spot on about you don't get enough sleep, it's as if you're drunk. That's how slow your reaction become. Is that really what you're into here? I mean, come on. You're supposed to be showing you're capable of doing the job. Get enough sleep, right? If you think you're still in college cramming for the test, time to wake up and be an adult. Okay, then it's not working now. So get your 7, 8 hours. Do it in that room that gives you the ultimate opportunity, the sleep experience, right? The new mattress, block out all the lights. I mean, everybody knows what to do. But by the way, it's like managing. Everybody knows what to do. We just don't do it.
Right.
So sleep. The third thing is exercise. You've got to get rid of stress. All of this is getting rid of stress and doing a better job, high performance. You've got to get rid of stress. One of the best ways to do that is exercise.
Yeah.
I'm a firm believer in outside exercise.
Mhm.
I go to I'm a gym rat. I go to the gym every day, but
Wow.
I walk through the woods. I've got a woods very close every day, 40-minute walk through the woods. And everybody's like, well, I don't have that time. You don't have the time not to have the time. You have to be able to de-stress. Otherwise, it will break you down. When we talk about mental issues, mental well-being, this is because we're not eliminating stress from our life. And it's very stressful lives. I understand why, but you've got to mitigate it by doing these other things instead of just letting it take over, instead of becoming a slug on the couch.
Mhm.
Netflix loves us. If we just sit there and watch, whether we like it or not. No, don't do that. Get up, get out.
Well, this brings us full circle because you've talked about rest, exercise, diet, how you eat, and then the relationships aspect, like
Yep.
the toxic relationships and how much that drains us, because it's not easy to just take out stress.
No. And I believe we are what we consume. And when I say that, I believe relationships are about consumption,
Okay.
well as liquor and food and rest. We are what we consume. By the way, we also what we I hate social media. I'm an old fogey about this. I think that it's detrimental because everybody has a megaphone and an opinion. And if you go down that rabbit hole, it will have a detrimental impact on you. So we
Mm-hmm.
very conscious about what we consume on social media, what we watch on television. I mean, these are things that we need to be cognizant of because it's so easy to get mindless about this. And we talk about being mindful. Being mindful means being aware, self aware. And we need to look at these areas of our life and evaluate, are we living our life appropriately? Once again, end of the year is a good time to do this. Take a look at your diet, you take a look at your exercise, you do all of those things. Then you take a look at your relationship. Then you take a look at how much of news information am I consuming? Do I need that much? How about if I cut back a little bit and spend more time, I don't know, walking? So it's a requirement if you are going to be a good team leader or a good team member. If you want to be a good team member, you've got to do the things necessary to support your team. And that will make you feel better. You're contributing. They've actually come out with a term that's irritating to me, languishing. Yeah, I know, but that's apparently what Gen Zs and millennials are doing. They're languishing. And I'm like, what are we in Victorian England? Uh, we don't need to languish because I believe that the remedy for languishing is action. Do something. Do something positive. Don't languish. Languish is inaction. And
Mm-hmm.
I get it. You got to sleep. I don't, if you want to veg, I'm okay with that. But languishing just has such a detrimental feel to it, and it's within our control as how we want to treat ourselves.
I was really proud of myself today. Before we got on this call, I had about 5 minutes and I set a timer. And I set a 5-minute timer and I'm like, I will just check my email and my social media stuff. And when the timer goes off, I'm done. And it
Good for
worked
you.
because I have to
Good
snap
for you.
myself out of it because otherwise it's easy to just like basically wallow in,
Oh,
all of the stuff that's
absolutely.
happening. But speaking of which, if you're not really big into social media, how will people find you?
I'm pretty easy to find. Website obviously is primary, or my email. It's Paul at paulglovercoaching.com. You can also find me on LinkedIn, Paul Glover and Paul Glover Coaching. That's how people can find me, and if they're looking.
And
Um,
it's Glover for
yes.
Glover. Glover.
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
Glover. Got it. All right. Well, thank you so much, Paul. I am so glad that we got to speak today. I think we might have broke a record. We went for a long time, but I think it's all good. So,
Well, and I wanted to say one more thing. I wrote a book, and I didn't used to be proud of the book. I am now because it's become much more relevant because of what we've been talking about. And so I'd like to offer your audience the opportunity to buy my book, contact me, and show me that you purchased it, and I will reimburse you the purchase price. Uh, that way, I appreciate the fact that you've allowed me to interact with you and also with your audience. And I would like to make that offer. And I think they'll find the book. Obviously, if I didn't think they'd find it interesting, I'd say don't. But I think you'll find it useful and as a corollary to our conversation today.
What is it called?
Workquake.
Workwake.
Workquake, like earth.
Workwake. Okay.
Quake. Yeah, it is. It is. It was talking about the change in the work environment, and it was 10 years ago, and nobody wanted to hear it.
Right. Okay.
I said, nobody's going to read this book. He said, well, maybe soon. 10 years later, I'm like, everybody should read this book. So
it's timely now.
it is.
Amazon, where do we find it? On your website?
Absolutely. Amazon, not my website, but just go to Amazon. There's someone, by the way, I trademarked Workquake. Someone else is using it. So I'm not upset necessarily, but when you go, make sure it's Paul Glover Workquake and not the other Workquake.
Got it. Okay. Well, thank you so much. This has been Paul Glover with April Malone and Yes, I Work From Home, and we will see you next time. Thank you so much.